as far as trading Justin Fields, I see a lot of stuff out there about what's the best timing. Should they do it now before free agency, when teams need quarterbacks and there's a bunch of teams? Will that maximize value? Or would waiting till near the draft or during the draft maximize value? I can tell you from my experience, I've always believed that if you control quality, if you control value, you're going to be fine with leverage. So I think there's going to be a market for Fields if they want to move him. And I think that whether it's now or later, they're going to be fine. I don't think it matters all that much because they have the first pick and they can be freely talking to any team, playing teams off against each other. There's leverage now, and I believe there's going to be leverage for them later.
And live from my Bahamas Resort Conference Center, which is a really nice space. You can see the art on the wall. I've got Mike Mayock joining me. The combine is going on. I know I'm at the beach, but it is a football week, and this is the guy that I wanted to have on to talk about all things combine. Mike, how you been, man?
We're doing great, Chris. Couldn't be better. The combine, I get a lot of memories, from way back when it started in the early 2000s, and it's just crazy to me how far it's come.
Yeah, what was the first combine you attended?
Well, you'll probably get a kick out of this, but the first time we televised it was around, I want to say 2004, 2005, and my dad was my high school football coach, but before being a high school coach, he was an offensive line coach in college football. He was a tight end at Villanova. He was drafted by the Steelers. So he was a offensive line guy, okay? And the first day was always offensive line. So the first year we did it, it's offensive line out the gate, and I'm all fired up after it's over, and I want to hear what my dad thought of it. I run back to the hotel room. I call my dad, and I'm like, so what'd you think? And he said, son, after 6 minutes of that offensive line mirror drill, I had to turn that shit off.
Yeah.
And I was like, if my dad, who's an offensive line guy, isn't going to watch the combine, who the hell is going to watch the combine? Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, it took off like crazy. I mean, it's amazing.
No, it is amazing. And right now, I think people are starting to talk about the fact that it is. There's a lot in it for the scouts, and obviously the medical and the times are important and the drills are amazing, but it's entertainment as well. I mean, the league definitely gets a lot out of it. So if you were in the business right now doing what you were doing a few years back and you were in there with a stopwatch or running meetings and that sort of thing, what do you think besides the times is the number one thing that people are getting on the team side of things from this exercise?
I think the number one thing is the same thing they got 40 years ago when the combine started, and that's medical, and the sharing of the medical. And it is kind of intriguing to me that 32 teams can get the exact same x-rays and the exact same medical, yet they have differing opinions on whether or not a kid should be drafted or a kid should be demoted or a kid should be taken off the board. The starting right guard for the world champion Kansas City Chiefs, Trey, had a heart condition.
Yep.
And he was at worst a second round pick. And he went in the 6th round to the Chiefs. And meanwhile, I got Gruden punching me. Let's go. Let's take this kid in the 5th, 6th. He's a first or second round player, and our team doctors wouldn't let us. Yeah. So that's just kind of one example of different ways that teams look at the medical. Kansas City said, hey, late in the draft, we'll take a chance. Our team said, no, we're not going to do that because it's a heart. It's not a knee. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to look at it. Chris, the medical's still critical. I think it's harder and harder to get a real snapshot of what drives a kid in that 18-minute interview. You know, they're being so. What year did you come out? What were you? Oh, 08,
Oh, it
7?
was my draft year.
Oh,
Yeah.
08. Wait, I'm curious as so you were going to be a first round pick.
Yeah.
You're the son of a Hall of Fame guy. You were a sophisticated guy coming out in '08 as far as process,
Hmm.
right? Today, almost all the kids are sophisticated. I mean, what was your takeaway of kind of like the interview process and how you felt as a player?
Well, yeah, I thought, it's funny because we covered this last week talking about a little bit, like the genetic thing, the Hall of Fame dad thing. It's so funny. Every year that passes, the more times I look back at, there was nothing freaky about me at all. Like these guys are freaks of nature. Like when you look at these 40s that these guys are running now, I think I ran a 4.75. You look at some of these broad jumps, these vertical leaps. I jumped to 34 and I was over the moon about it. And every year there's one or two edge guys jumping a 40. The insane times that guys are coming in with. I think that's the biggest takeaway is for the first time in your life, you're in a place where everybody in the place is a freak of nature.
Yep.
And you can really get an idea looking at like people are marveling over this guy from Georgia, and he was standing there in the media pool, and he's the guard. Macon, this guy's name.
Marius Mims. He's a
Yeah,
tackle. Yeah.
yeah, tackle.
He's a freak. He's a
Yeah,
stone freak.
Mike may not be crunching tape anymore, but he knows exactly who this guy is.
No, I've watched Chris. I've watched probably the top 100 players on tape.
Okay, well then this interview just changed. I'm just going to make you go through.
No, we're not doing that.
No.
But Marius Mims is a freak on tape as well as and he's got a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And he's raw as can be. But man, would you like to work with that lump of clay?
Man, and the lump of clay, he's the type of lump of clay that when I saw that picture of him and the picture was taken from behind him is the strangest thing. When you've been in an NFL locker room, Macon, you might not be able to relate to this, but I can feel what it would feel like to pat him on the back. Like Mike, you know what I mean? There's a certain time, like I can look at a guy and be like, yep, if I patted him on the shoulder, I'd be like, yep, that's an NFL player for 10, 12 years. The way he's built, I could just feel how solid his shoulder would feel. The back straps on this guy, and I think that's the biggest eye-opening thing is like when you play in the ACC or the SEC, you might see more of these guys. But for me, it was my senior year. It was Jeff Otah. It was seeing Orlando Franklin. These were guys to me that I was like, okay, this is what all the guys at the next level are from a size standpoint. And then you get in the room with them. I think also from the interview process, we're so prepared that we know as we're giving the interview that we could obscure our true selves a little bit. If you're good at it, you can play that game. I came into it with an attitude of they're going to know who I am. I'm going to be as honest as I can. I don't have anything to hide. And I think people appreciate that. But now I imagine we were messing around looking for red flags on kids. We go back through their Instagram, try to find. Nowadays, kids really are shutting it down from a social media standpoint. You can tell that these agents are really infiltrating every step of the process to make sure that there are no leaks, as far as things you might not want the teams to know. And so I think right now it's got to be, from a character standpoint, as much of a guessing game as it was at any point, even though now you have more information than ever, because I feel like guys are so coached.
They're really well coached, and you get 18 minutes and the horn blows.
Yeah.
And what frustrated me a little bit when I was a GM, it's your first exposure for your coaching staff to these kids. Okay, your area scout has seen Chris Long for 3 or 4 years now. Your area scout knows where he grew up, knows what his parents did for a living, knows what the kid's all about, has watched him at practice, has watched him in the games, has written all kinds of reports. That gets translated into the scouting room with the GM and everybody else. We disseminate all that information. But the first time the coaches really see or hear about Chris Long or the 7th round pick from UVA is kind of at the combine, right? So first impressions are kind of intriguing to me. And kids that came off kind of energetic, a lot of energy, the coaches like them. and it didn't, and we'd be kind of like, it doesn't make him a better player or a worse player. He just has a lot of energy. He's an outgoing kid, and or if a kid was kind of quiet and shy, it doesn't mean he's an energy vampire. Right? It's just but it's a first impression from the coaching staff. And it's kind of like the kids are so well coached up these days. To your point, Chris, it's hard to get a lot out in 18 minutes. And we had a game plan for every kid that came in. So if a kid had an off the field issue, usually I would start the meeting and I would try to drill down on them a little bit. And but the kid tells the story to 32 teams over a period of 6 months. He gets pretty good at it, right? And he's been coached on how to do it before he even got there. If we think a corner isn't particularly tough on tape, but he's a long, gifted kid, but he doesn't tackle, he doesn't take on the guard pull, then we might have 6 plays pulled up ready to go when he walks in the room. And I would say, hey, I'm going to turn this over to my defensive coordinator. We want to know why you don't like to tackle. And you're trying to jar, and you're not trying to be a dick. You're just trying to get the kid off his rhythm a little bit so you get some honest feedback.
And now you can read him though, yeah, because that now how he reacts to being off the script might tell you something.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to be a dick, and I'm not trying to throw a crazy, do you like cats or dogs better? This is football tape. Okay? Yeah. What I really want to hear from the kid is, well, I just watched those 6 plays. You picked 6 plays out of 4,000, but did you watch me as a gunner? You want to see some toughness? Watch that. Yeah. I want to see when the kid gets his back up a little bit, how he responds. Does he crawl into himself and say, yeah, I can get better at that? Or does he kind of, what is it? And so we had a game plan kind of drawn up for every kid based on what we felt we had to drill down on a little bit more.
And here's how it's even more of a crapshoot, Mike, because you can see something in somebody's background like addiction, whether it's addictive personality or something else, and sometimes it turns bad, and sometimes it turns into Max Crosby.
Max Crosby.
Yep. And that's a really good example on a lot of levels because the league knew about Max drinking. There weren't any secrets. So you watch this kid play with his hair on fire. Every frickin' play was like the last play he was ever going to play. He was this kind of pasty, pale dude flying around the field, making play after play. Was he going to get bigger and stronger? Because he wasn't great against the run then. Okay, he was just. But I'll tell you what he could do, Chris. You'll get a kick out of this. He could frickin' bend. Yes. He could bend like Gumby. Yep. Right? He could dip and bend and accelerate, and he had these long arms. But it's a great question because where would he have gone if he didn't have an addiction problem? Right? And then the sequel to that is, and Max and I are very good friends. I was at his wedding last year, and I love the kid. I love his wife, Rachel. Kid means a lot to me, okay, from where he's come from. And what's cool now is he's taken that addictive personality, which he used to channel towards drugs and alcohol, and he's now channeling it towards being a great father, a great husband, and a great football player. And he's got goals in all 3 of those realms. And that's what drives him. And by the way, part of that is being a great teammate, which he is. He owns that locker room. I mean, that's what, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, green, yellow, offense, defense, Max Crosby is your guy. So he's channeled all that addiction into positive things. And he's only, 26 years old. I mean, the kid's played 5 years in the league. He's 26. He wants to be a Hall of Famer, and he's on the way.
Yeah, he's on his way. The one thing I would say about Max is kind of a sidebar. If you were his GM now, would you be in AP's ear being like, hey, 80 snaps a game's a little much. Yeah. If we want this kid to last long enough that he is a Hall of Famer. Because if he plays like this his entire career, he's a Hall of Famer. But you and I both know Hall of Fame's about longevity, and yeah, as a guy that I used to play 80 snaps a game, that shit catches up with you. Caught up with me in a big way. I'm not saying it's going to happen to him, but do you think that's something that in today's NFL you got to be more cognizant of? Because you love the spirit of wanting to be out there every play, but you got to protect the player.
I talked to him a little bit after I think it was his second year in the league. He just used to come up my office and close the door, and we talk about, you know, just our lives, you know, and sometimes football. And I told him at one point that, you know, I admire the fact that you're a warrior, and I admire the way you train to play 100% of the snaps. But over time, the way the game has evolved is that two things can happen when we substitute on that defensive line. You know, one is we keep everybody fresh, so in the fourth quarter, when you got to go get them, you can go. Our best players are on the field on the most critical downs, playing at their highest level. And the second thing is, personally, you can play longer at a higher level. And if you look at the number of snaps around the league, Chris, you make an amazing point. If you compare his snaps as a defensive end to any other starting defensive end in the league, it's not even close.
No.
I mean, it's off the chart. He's over 90% of the defensive snaps every week.
Yeah.
And a lot of times 100.
Yeah.
You know, and I was hoping that they would start to roll Malcolm Kuntz in earlier, like 2 years ago,
Yeah,
because he's a talented edge rusher. And I thought, you know, they drafted the kid in the first round and they had Chandler Jones and he didn't get on the field. I felt like Malcolm used properly, could give Max a little bit of a rest too. And without too much of a drop off when Malcolm was fresh.
Yeah, I hope they get him some rest. I mean, I know from experience, you want to be, it's almost like a point of pride. The challenge can be kind of motivating. It can kind of be something you get caught up in. So I totally get the spirit. But just as somebody sitting here at 38 years old who's been through it, I'm like, man, you could take a break every now and again because you do start feeling it. How about, so, you know, getting off the Raiders sidebar a little bit, like with the combine numbers, we talked about this, I think, the last time you were on the show. Like, there are some numbers and testing that you guys are probably like, yeah, we take all that with a grain of salt. It's about the RAS, or it's about kind of like putting it all together. But I was watching a DB backpedal and brake drill yesterday and found out exactly how fast guys are going, how many miles an hour they get up to. You know, I'm pretty sure you can tell where in the drill you peaked at that point, and, you know, like acceleration, all that stuff. Like GPS now, to me, I wonder if GPS is going to get to the point where it kind of makes the testing numbers obsolete. You know, like, I'm not saying obsolete, but where it's almost as important, the thing that no fans are really consuming, because we don't know that that's the thing to consume. We're all looking over here at the 40, but are people in buildings now looking at GPS tracking just as much during the drills and out on the field?
Great point. And I was watching the wideouts the other day. Okay, go through the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Okay, and everybody used to make fun of the gauntlet because you catch the ball and then the first thing you do with it is you throw away the most precious thing in a game, which is a football. But you catch it and you throw it away, you fumble it. Why are you doing this drill? You know? And every year I try to explain to people that the key to it was that you couldn't weave. You had to stay on a straight line, and you had to run fast. You couldn't cheat the drill.
Right.
Okay? And I thought Daniel Jeremiah did a great job the other day with the GPS equipment, showing examples of how some guys accelerate through the drill. Other guys are just worried about their hands and where the next ball, and you can see it. I could always tell when a guy accelerated and just plucked it and threw it. Like, I could tell easily, just visually. However, what the GPS has done, I'll give you two examples, Chris, to bring it home. Last year, Puka Nacua, right? We all know who he is, right? Puka runs like high 4.5s in the 40. Yet in this kind of throwaway gauntlet drill, he had the highest GPS. Okay? And you could watch him go through the drill. They showed a flashback. It was just like pluck, 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 accelerate straight. It was easy. Like he grew, and I get that. He's got natural, boom, boom, go. This year, kid from Florida State, Keon Coleman, I think it was, he ran 4.61 in his 40. I did his tape. He's not a 4.61 guy. He's probably he's a big body wide out. He's probably on the field. He runs 4.5. It looks like he's a legit height, weight, speed guy, and he's going to go in the first couple rounds, right? But he ran 4.61. Who do you think had the fastest GPS in the gauntlet? Keon Coleman. And he was flying. And it just pluck, throw. It was easy. So to your point, Chris, even though I'm an old guy, I think information's good. I think technology used properly in context is good. Yeah. And I really like the way the GPS helps kind of add another layer to these drills.
Yeah, I feel like it's inevitable that at some point we look up and we're like, we can track every inch of movement that these guys are, like finding comps, you're going to be able to be like, yo, that guy's GPS was exactly the same as Chandler Jones, the way he moves, the force, the whole thing. Like, I'm thinking of a time where we can just plug it into a machine and we're like, that's Von Miller.
Yes.
Maybe I'm daydreaming, but I feel like at some point with GPS, we might be there.
Mike, Chris and I went to Virginia. Chris is very anti-robot. Paul Tudor Jones also went to Virginia. Are you still in the AI space, Mike?
Here I am. I'm 65 years old. I have trouble turning my laptop on. Literally. Like, I don't have headphones. You told me, I'm supposed to wear headphones. I don't have them.
I'm the host. I got no mic, no headphones. I've been a freaking, I don't even, what is this? Look at this room. Anyways, go ahead, Mike.
My son sends me the little white things that you stick in your ear, like
AirPods.
Pods, whatever they are, right?
AirPods.
Like my son constantly tries to get me into the world of technology.
Yeah.
But what's really funny when it comes to football, like if I think a certain thing can help us do a better job, I'm all in. Yeah. And that's why I think that the UVA grad Paul Tudor Jones is intriguing. And I mean, he started a company called Sumer Sports, and he's trying to drive AI into football in a big way, from helping you on draft day assimilate so much, process so much information you couldn't do it with the human brain. Yet what they can do while you're on the clock is process a incredibly difficult trade using algorithms and spit out an answer in 20 seconds or less of whether or not it's a good trade for your team. And using the value of money, your salary cap. It's what they're trying to do is intriguing. And Thomas Dimitroff, the former GM, runs the football side of it. And they've hired scouts and GMs and people like me. And that's why I wrote 100 reports this year, because at some point, it's great to have the algorithms and how intelligent these men are, which way beyond my comprehension. I'm amazed at what these guys can retain and what they do. But sooner or later, you need a football grade, right? And to me, so to answer your question, Macon, I just feel like, to Chris's point earlier, when you add that layer of the GPS along with your football knowledge of what the drill's supposed to show, it just adds to it.
Yeah, you got to have both, right? We're never just going to leave, you're never going to leave the Lucas Oil Stadium to just robots. Like, there's got to be people in there.
Got to be people. And
there's got to be.
By the way, Chris, that reminds me.
Yeah.
I had you at 4.83.
Did you really?
Yeah. But what I liked about you was, and again, I don't remember you jumped 34. I don't think you ever long jumped, even at your pro day. Did you?
No, I jumped 10.8. Now, what I did well is I had a 1.55 10-yard split.
I was just going to say your 10-yard and your two shuttles.
It's the third or fourth best. It's the third or fourth best by a guy over 250 or something. I read that this year because
your 10 and your shuttles were really good. And what that told me, I didn't really care about what you did yards 20 through 40 in your 40. Yes. What I cared about was the quickness and the twitch in a short area.
Yep.
And you had that.
And I think when you look at defensive linemen, I still do think 10-yard split, it seems obvious, but to me, that's a big one. And then I think there's probably something to that 3-cone drill when it comes to turning and sinking your leverage and all that stuff. But I think arm length is obviously huge. Going back and tracking these guys over the last couple of years, the guys who have the best sack numbers in the league, there's only a couple with arms under 33, generally, and Trey Hendrickson's one of them. So I think, like, if you're going to be a short arm guy, you got to be a really quick area burst guy. And you got to have good hips, and you got to have good hands. But these guys, I would look at arm length. Dallas Turner is an example. Dallas Turner lit it up, okay? I'm just going to say this. I'm still figuring out what kind of a pass rusher he is watching tape of him.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't think he's the best pass rusher in the draft. That's just me. But when you watch him test and you watch him run around, you're like, holy shit. Now, the one thing I wanted to ask you about him is he's really high hipped.
Yeah.
Okay. Like when you look at a rusher with high hips or with a long torso, and to some people at home, they're like, what gives? There's a big difference athletically in the skill sets that a guy might bring to the table. How do you guys analyze that balance between torso and leg length?
There's a lot to that question, even when you bring in the Trey Hendrickson piece of it also. Power typically starts from the ground up. So you're trying to displace through your lower body all this power. When you look at a Hendrickson or a Shaq Lawson or some of those guys with shorter arms that become effective pass rushers, you got to be really careful because most of them don't make it at a high level.
Yep.
The ones that do typically make it because they have another trait that's elite. Explosion is usually the one. Okay? And I use explosion in different ways. Again, you're exploding from the ground. Can you bend and explode? Do you have that inside, even if you're 32.5-inch arm, do you have that inside arm that rocks people?
Yep.
That you can place it and rock a 320-pound tackle. And some of those guys have that. Hendrickson has that. Shaq Lawson has that. So can you land, even though your arm's short, can you land that where it belongs and rock a guy?
Timing.
Yes.
Timing. But I don't know that Trey has that if he doesn't have the poof,
Yep.
That's what gives him the opportunity to put people in positions that are disadvantageous where he's like, okay, I hit the weak spot, right there on that back,
Yep. Yeah, there was a guy back years ago, I'm trying to remember his name, when I was first doing the NFL Network stuff, and he had a lot of sacks in college. He was a short arm guy, and I got all excited about him. He was running around, he looked quick, and he had a very mediocre at best career. And I remember talking to a couple of Hall of Fame coaches later about it, saying, I missed on this guy. I need to I got to go back. And they were like, Mike, he wasn't explosive. He could get by with it in college.
Yeah.
But once he got up against Amarius Mims or Kyle Long, 2'6", just you got to do some things to displace those kinds of men.
Yes.
Right? And it can be change of direction to get them off balance. It can be bend. It can be pure speed. It can be up and under. It can be long pole. It can be all those things, but you got to have something, right? You can't just come off and with your 32.5-inch arms and try to run the arc every snap. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So, Chris, we could have that conversation, Chris, for like a day.
Yeah.
Because I love that conversation, and there's so much that goes into it.
The hip thing, though, is that something you guys would ever look at? Like, the guy's got really long legs, is he – I can't think of a guy who's got really longer lower half.
Well, you brought up the
I just can't come up with one that would suit the example well.
No, that's okay. You brought up the kid from Alabama.
Yeah.
Right? Dallas Turner. And, I look at him like I did when Brian Burns came out.
That's the comp, right?
In my head, I don't know if anybody, but yeah, that's my comp for him. Yeah. I didn't love Brian Burns, and part of it was my mistake, something I had to learn, which I got pissed off because I didn't think that he defended the run as well as he should have. I thought that, physical guys got a hold of him pretty good, but what I think I lost in the translation a little bit as the game changed to a pass-first league over the last, 20 years, who closes out the game in the fourth quarter for you?
Yeah.
It's Brian Burns.
Yeah.
Right? It's that kind of guy. And Dallas Turner's got to get stronger. He's got a lot to learn, but he's got some length, and he's got and he's got the natural pass rush ability that Brian Burns had, and that's why I think people are excited about him.
The little Florida State kid ran a 4.7 something, the defensive tackle.
Yeah, the transfer.
The white guy.
The white guy.
Yeah, that's the lead here. Another lead is we had a linebacker run a 4.4. So, go ahead. And Lad McConkey, fastest Irishman in the history of the combine, 4.39. Maybe the fastest Irishman in the history of Irishmen.
You know what? When I was doing McConkey this fall, I knew he was a walk-on. So or not a walk-on, but he got the last scholarship to Georgia. And I was trying to figure out why. And I went back and I found some old footage on YouTube of him at like a high school camp shredding people, just shredding guys, right? And all I'm seeing in my head is a bigger and maybe faster Hunter Renfrow. Right. He's got that kind of twitch and quickness, and you're bringing up white guys and whatever. So in my head, Hunter Renfrow's as good as it gets as far as that short area quickness, understanding how to set a guy up and move. But you should have seen this kid, Lad McConkey, at age 17, shredding 5-star guys.
Yeah.
And he didn't have, I don't think he was going to go, I forget to what college. He was going to some non-Division I school, and at the very end, Georgia offered him, and he's turned into Lad McConkey.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I feel like we're kind of getting to this point where we see this almost every year, or maybe I'm losing track, where it's like another fastest time. And like, are guys getting faster, or are they getting better at the drill?
I think they're getting better at the drill, and like Xavier Worthy flies.
Yeah,
I did him this fall. Like he's Deshaun Jackson fast. He's a lean track athlete, and I'm not saying he's a track guy. He's a football guy, but he's a lean. He ran 10.5 in high school and 100 meter. I mean, he's legit. But the thing is, I'll give you an example of me. I ran shitty 40s. I was a safety, right? But I was a baseball player. I was a high-level baseball player. Played at Boston College. So I never got in a three-point stance in my life until it was time to run a 40. I was a high school quarterback and a defensive back and a baseball player, not a track guy. So my 5th year at BC, I ended up training with the track team after football ended just because I knew I was going to have to run some. And so the same guy that ran like 4.78 at my junior pro day ran 4.56 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And all I did was learn how to start the first 5 yards. Right? So that's an oversimplified version of what's going on today at all these Exos camps and everything around the country, or guys are learning how to beat the drill. And to be honest with you, Chris, it doesn't bother scouts. What they want to see is your best. They want to see what you're capable of.
Yeah, because it's all relative.
Yep.
And everybody else has the same opportunity to go to an Exos camp and take advantage of it and study details. A 2-part Caleb Williams question. Number one, like, do you get hung up on regression in a third year, whatever year it was? I think it was junior year. People say, hey, the 22 tape, far and away better than the 23 tape. I think anybody who watched college football knows that in some of the big spots, maybe not where you wanted him to be. I mean, he's still supremely talented in QB1. That's the way everybody's talking about him. Do you ever worry about regression? How do you handle that as a GM where you're like, I saw it, but... And then the second part of my question would be, do you feel the narrative shift? I mean, obviously, like, there's a narrative onslaught that comes with certain guys, and it almost feels timed. Like, I know some of it he might have done to himself, but some of it feels like, hey, the media's just turning the dial. As a GM, is it hard to ride that wave and stick to what you know?
First, regarding regression, I'm not sure I would agree that he regressed. I think he had a different team this year with less ability, and I think he pressed a little bit to try and make plays. I'll give you an example. I think it was the Washington game. The first 9 possessions of the game, USC scored 7 touchdowns. And the score was tied 42-42. Okay. And they lost 52-42. And the
Yeah.
people that say he regressed would say that he threw a key interception late in the game and blah, blah, blah. I go through that tape and I go with just about any other person playing quarterback, it's 52-14. Like this kid kept them in the game,
Yeah.
making plays nobody should have made. And at a certain point, when you're trying to throw guys open and when you're trying to make plays, are you going to make a mistake? Yeah, you're going to be more prone to mistakes. But this is what I tell you about the kid, whether it's 22 or 23. His athletic ability is off the charts, and people are trying to focus on that. But I always get back to, okay, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you can get away from Chris Long, or you can get away from, you're getting pressure. You can get away from some of these guys. You need that in today's league, but you also need a quarterback that can win inside the pocket. And this kid can win in the pocket. This kid's innate feel and movement skills as he slides and moves with his eyes up despite the rush is special. And I think what you saw in 23 was maybe the O-line wasn't as good, maybe the skill, maybe just his offensive team wasn't as good, and this kid was trying to be heroic. So there are a couple different ways to look at that. And the public narrative doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or you got to decide in your building what you're looking for, and you got to have the balls to say that's who we are and that's who we want.
Yeah, when it comes to Caleb and this Bears trade, if you're the Bears and you know one way or another, right now, what are you taking into consideration if you're like, we know we're trading him? Like, take me inside their war room as far as protecting that information,
Yeah.
and playing the other side of it, and then vice versa. If you know that you are, keeping Justin Fields, which would be the less than likely outcome, what are you considering right now?
Well, the beauty for them is that obviously with the first pick, it changes everything because nobody can jump you, right? So you're dictating everything. As far as trading Justin Fields, I see a lot of stuff out there about what's the best timing. Should they do it now before free agency, when teams need quarterbacks and there's a bunch of teams? Will that maximize value? Or would waiting till near the draft or during the draft maximize value? I can tell you from my experience, I had some calls on Derek Carr. Derek was getting better every year with John Gruden and that offensive staff, Greg Olson and our guys. Derek was really, I thought he got better each year, and in 21 we go to the playoffs, and he was a top 10 or 12 quarterback, no matter whether you like him or not. He was. And we were getting to the draft, and I'm getting phone calls on Derek, and people are offering significant things. And the closer the draft got, the more a couple of GMs were panicked about what's going to be left. There was nothing in free agency. I don't think I'm going to be able to get up high enough to get the guy I want. What's going to be left? Right? So you can make a case, I think, either way. But I've always believed that if you control quality, if you control value, you're going to be fine with leverage. So I think there's going to be a market for Fields if they want to move him. And I think that whether it's now or later, they're going to be fine. I don't think it matters all that much because they have the first pick and they can be freely talking to any team, playing teams off against each other. There's leverage now, and I believe there's going to be leverage for them later.
Mike, two-parter involving Tom Cable. Try to stick with me here. I got a phone call at 7 a.m. from Kyle Long today. And he said, Chris is out of the country. I'm trying to fill that void. I'm giving you a call. I said, well, you may have the week off, but we're going to be in there at 11 a.m. talking to Mike Mayock. And he said, tell Mike Mayock that all I wanted to be after retiring and coming back was a Raider. And that Tom Cable put me through a 30-minute workout, nearly killed me, and then said he didn't want me. So that's part one. Part two is here. Chris and I went to a concert about 10 years ago. He introduced me to Richie Incognito. I put my hand out to shake his hand, and he grabbed me by the collar, pulled me in, ripped my shirt, and said, good to meet you. It was the most intense physical salutation of my life. And then you have a story about Incognito pulling you off a Jersey Shore beach for a 60-second workout in Vegas, leaving your family for all of 60 seconds. Why does Richie Incognito get the 60-second workout and Kyle Long have to dance around for 30 minutes?
Oh, that's interesting.
Macon, I'm really happy you joined today. Thanks.
That's how I always feel.
Freaking awesome, brother. Thank you for that question. You will not be invited to the Mayock household for any Ocean City galas.
Hey, you know who his friend is, Mike, is Marcus Higgins. He's friends with Marcus Higgins, too.
Oh, that's my guy.
Yeah.
Love Marcus.
Yeah.
Love
Take,
Marcus.
take either part you want first, Mike.
All right, so the Incognito story is a simpler one. You don't get much time off in the NFL. And I was in Ocean City, New Jersey on the beach with my wife, and the phone rings, and it's Incognito's agent. And he's like, look, he's ready for his comeback, and he's overcome all these problems, and he's in unbelievable shape. And, you know, we and this is July. You know, we're going to training camp in a couple weeks. And I'm just sitting there. I got a red stripe in one hand and probably a cigar in the other. And just could not be happier. And I'm like, okay, you know, when are we going to do this? And so I called Gruden, you know, and Cable, and they're like, yeah, let's get him out here now. I'm like, awesome. So, of course, we got him out there. And Cable had this square that he would set up for all his workouts in the beginning of and in this square, you did 4 different drills to complete this, you know, maybe it was 20 yards in each direction. And some of it was like defensive back stuff. You know, the first part of it, you're running high knees forward. The second part, you're backpedaling. Then you're doing karaoke. Then you're doing, so he had 4 different things just to kind of see what kind of shape you were in, what kind of hips you had, your feet. And I kind of like that. I thought that was good. You know, you get to see big guys do some awkward things right away. And so Incognito he comes out and he was 30 some years old. He looked like he was about 21. He's got this boyish face, you know, he's clean cut. He's in great shape. He's 320 some pounds. There's not an ounce of fat on him. And he does the square the first time. And Cable looks at me and Gruden and he goes like this, seen enough, right? Gruden looks at me. He's like, yeah, I'm good. And I'm like, okay. He's a former All-Pro. Yeah. He looks like Adonis. I flew 5 hours out here to see him work out for 22 seconds. I'm in. So we signed him. Now, Macon, thank you very much for the segue to the second part of this. People know how I'm very good friends with the Long family. One of my favorite people in the entire world is Howie Long, and one of my next favorite people is his wife, Diane Long. And I've seen the Long kids grow up. And so my affinity and belief in the Long family is as strong or stout as anybody in the world. So Kyle wants to come back. Awesome. I'm all in. I don't need to see him work out. Matter of fact, I didn't need 22 seconds. I didn't need any seconds. I just wanted to sign him, right? But we're going to bring him in, and he's going to work out. And I think what you have to understand the background of this is that coaches have their favorite players that they've coached in the past. And with that, they have comfort levels, right? Guys that have been in their system, guys that have played for them, guys they want to sign because of that. And I don't always see that agenda until a certain point, okay? So basically, it was all set to bring Chris in. We took him out to dinner the night before. He was going to do, in my mind, a quick workout the next day, and we were going to sign him. We had the space. I knew how we were going to get the space, and Gruden was on board, and we were ready to go. And the next day, you know, he came out, and I thought he had a really good workout. And he worked, to Kyle's point, it was a solid 30 minutes. It wasn't 22 seconds. And Kyle was what, 31 years old, maybe, Chris, I want to say?
He had to be, about
32.
31.
So he was in great shape. He was ready to go. And I was like, I wanted to go like this the minute he walked in the door. Let's just have a beer and sign him. Let's go. And so we go through this whole workout. And really, I think, to be fair to the coaching side of this, I was ready. And this is hard for me because I felt like my word was out there with the Long family. Okay. Right. And Chris held up his end of the bargain. And Chris went in to shower and a conversation ensued. And there was another offensive lineman available out there that our coaches had a comfort level with. This is the first time, and I knew he was out there, but this is the first I'm hearing that they want to sign him ahead of Kyle. And Kyle's showering in our locker room. So, I mean, that's a long way of saying that I understand how coaches think. I'm a coach's son. They wanted, and again, this is not a shot at Tom Cable. Tom had a guy out there he wanted to try and sign, a veteran O-lineman that played for him, had gone to war for him. But I felt very strongly about Kyle, obviously, for all the reasons. I thought he would help our team. He'd be a veteran leader. I thought he was going to end up starting for us. There was no way in my head Kyle wasn't going to start for us. So,
I think Tom hates Kyle's brother.
Really?
From our days in St. Louis and Seattle. Maybe it had something to do with that.
Well, and again, I'm not taking any shots at Tom other than
I like Tom. Don't know him, like him.
Here's the problem. But here's the problem I had is if that's the way we were going, we shouldn't have brought Chris in and put him through that. And I was embarrassed and upset. And it was even further embellished when his next stop was Kansas City.
Right.
And they didn't even work him out. Andy Reid just shook his hand and said, "Welcome, brother. We're excited you're here."
Yeah.
So, Macon, you're kind of a dick for asking that question.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one to leave Mike on. You asshole.
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought that out because I'm going to get a few phone calls after this
from Dad and from Tom Cable.
That was Kyle's submission to the show.
Well,
yeah,
tell Kyle I love him, and I'm still sorry. I literally had to go to a pro day. I had to fly from there, from our workout with Kyle. I think I was going to Georgia, and I was late getting to the airport. And I gave Kyle a big hug. I was almost in tears. I was so upset. I called your dad because I had to tell your dad what happened, and I was just. Your dad, thank God, knows me and knew.
He knows the business.
He wasn't going to get on me, but I felt like the biggest dick in the world that day.
Yeah, Kyle's okay. I mean, happens to all types of players.
No, Kyle's
fly out for a fucking workout and then couldn't sign with the team. Cry me a river, Kyle.
Well, trust me, I cried a river over that.
I know you did because you're a good guy. Mike Mayock, everybody, appreciate you coming on. We got to get you back on more and love the stories, man. Just really appreciate your insight.
And I appreciate you, Chris. And the next time, Macon better be in the background somewhere off camera with no
That's where we're working on putting them.